All right, it is 12:05, so I'm going to get started. Hello, today is day 71 of our class, meaning it's Monday, the 24th of April. I am taping right now. For the next 2 days, I'm going to go over in detail the chapter 16 running example. And I'm to the point where, you know, we're late in this class, really late. So what I'd like you to try to do is to I don't think it's worth us doing the chapter 16 case study. All right. If you want to try to work on the chapter 16, the other one, which is we'll look at that a little bit later, that's fine. If all you do for chapter 16 is the written test, that'll be sufficient. All right, I think that that's Clayton, so let's let him in. All right. So again, to start right now, today and tomorrow, I'm going to go over the chapter 16 running chapter example. It should be. I sent everybody a private copy of the repo that you should have gotten an invite to. All right. So we're going to go over, as it says, first the instructions and the requirements for the e-portfolio, which is due a week from Thursday. Then we're going to start right into the chapter. And I'm going to go, I know exactly where I want to get to today. All right. And then after that, we'll finish it up tomorrow. I don't know if somebody else is on. Okay. Oh, you're in here twice, according to this, John, but hopefully you're in here at least once. All right. So today we're going to go through the first half of chapter 16 and we'll finish it up tomorrow. Okay. Also, then on Wednesday, I'm going to hand out your AWD1115 last hands-on test. Evan is doing it the same way. We will go over the test in detail. So we'll spend, if we have to, up to a half an hour on it. The rest of the period will be lab. Thursday and Friday will be lab. All right. And the lab or the test will be due in your GitHub repo by Monday at midnight. Guess I screwed up with the time there. Well, originally we had said 5/4, but I'm giving you more time than Evan is giving his students. He's giving them 2 or 3 days. I'm giving you more than that, including the weekend. All right. Next Tuesday, so a week from tomorrow, I am currently starting to go over React with the students in the AWD 1000 class. Everything I do, I'm saving out to repos. I will give you a copy of that, and I will spend part of the period, or if not most of the period, going over some JavaScript and React examples. All right, finally, a week from Wednesday, we'll go over chapter 17 and attempt to deploy one or more of these things that we've been working on. As it says, there will be no work assigned from the chapter. Thursday will be a lab day for you to complete any remaining work. It's the last real full day of the course. All right, technically they say Friday is, but we have to have grades in by, they like them in by 10 o'clock Friday morning. So again, as it says right there, your chapter 16, let's just say written test. All right, get that in by this week Sunday. All right, if you have time and you want to try the lab or you want to try the case study, fine. And if you don't, that's fine as well. I mean, this has been I know many of you have been frustrated this semester. I have been frustrated this semester over quite a few things that I really don't want to get into. All right, your final hands-on test then, that's wrong. Geez, Jeff, it'd be nice if you would proof this stuff first. It's due Monday. All right. So I flip these around. Your portfolio was due the 4th. Your hands-on test is due Monday. I'll fix that and send it out right in just a bit. Any late work that's completed has to be completed by midnight on Thursday, the 4th. I will not accept any work after that. Probably have mentioned this to you already. Friday morning, Evan and I have to get together and fill out all these forms for student outcome assessment that are due by noon. Plus, we've got to, finish our work ethic grades, whatever. So that's the last day that I'll accept anything. All right. So with that said, before we jump into this, let's quickly look. I had gotten emails about this. So as it says, due no later than midnight, 5/4/2023. All right. I don't care how you write this. Probably with all of you, if not at least most of you, you're going to go back to the one that you did last semester and just add links to it so that you've got your final in here and maybe one or two other projects. Okay. I do want you to publish this portfolio out to GitHub pages. That is a link on there where I went and did this. This was for my AWD1000 students when I talked both about MobiRise, which is a drag and drop thing you can use to create portfolios and other website material. And I also did a thing in there for GitHub pages. You must also provide me with an invite. And as it says, that's worth 15 points or 10%. And I'm looking at that as being an all or nothing thing. Either you publish it to GitHub pages and you send me an invite or you don't. All right. Okay. Some people have done their site where they've had multiple pages. Other people have done it where they've got more or less a SPA, a single page app, where they just scroll down. Either way is fine. All right. But you have to have some kind of a home or landing page or area, an about you area, which has to have a picture of you in it, a resume, and that resume, you should provide both PDF and Word formats. If you've never done it before, you can take a Word document and you can do a save as, and you can save it as a PDF. In addition, there are many online tools that you can use where you can take a PDF and make it into a Word document as well. Go from one to the other. All right. Should also have a portfolio thing in there. Now, if you're going to do that, what you may want to consider doing is anything that you're going to link to in your portfolio, not so much for me, but for prospective employers, you'll want to take that work and make sure that it's not private anymore. You probably know how to do this, but I don't like taking anything for granted here. So if I go to github.com and for example, oops, try it again. If I go to github.com, all right, and I'm going to go out and just grab this. This is something old I did before. All right. But if I don't know right now what on here, what the what the mode is, I can go to settings and it says right here that it's public, or I can just go over here. I can type in public or private and go to here. And this is where you can change it. All right. Not there. Let's see. Right there. Change repository visibility. So right now it's public. If I wanted to make that private, I could click right there. All I'm saying is my hope is that you are already on the road to where you're starting to look for employment. And you will take anything that I would definitely put a link to your electronic portfolio on your resume. And I would make sure that anything that you're pointing to in there has got access so that any potential employer can see it if they so desire. All right. As already mentioned, you can build this in whatever you want to. You can build it in straight HTML and CSS. There'll probably be very little to no JavaScript in it anyway. You can use Bootstrap. You can use MobiRise, whatever works the best for you. But if you look on there, as it says, each page or section must be similar in style and be aesthetically pleasing. Each page or section must contain meaningful content to potential employers. There should be no broken links. I think it looks terrible if you've got an image in there and you're not linking to it correctly. There shouldn't be anything that doesn't work in there. I already talked about the picture of yourself, and it should have a working contact form. So that's 30 points. All right, right there. So between those two, That's 45 points. So actually 15, 30, and 30. That's half of it right there. And the rest of it, as it says, the coursework must include examples or links to, I don't want just a screenshot. But what you can do is you can go and bring up the associated repo, do a screenshot, and then put a link in there or make it clickable where it goes to your GitHub repository. All right. As it says, again, it must be built in one of those things. We talked about all this stuff already. All right. So from HTML, you should have examples of CSS, of Bootstrap, and whatever you had for a midterm. All right. If you say we didn't have a midterm, you really did. There should be some kind of a project. I know with my students, we did a Bootstrap thing on a pizza company. We've done other things as well. All right. If you had Evan for the class, you might have done the Belleville Running Club or something else. All right. Also, you should put in 3 or more JavaScript examples. All right. Ideally, one of those or more will be with jQuery. For the C# class, as it says, some live examples from 4 or more of the chapters or other programs that you want. So just grab assignments that you did, grab tests that you did. Remember, this is your time to shine. This is your time to show a prospective employer, I know what I'm talking about. You should hire me. Again, ideally, what this will do is it will help get you in the door. It'll help get you that interview. For the class from last semester, all right, find something that had Node in it, Mongo in it. And for the React, well, we did several things. We did that weather app. We tried doing a to-do app. All right. What else? We did the movie app. Whatever you think is the best. Finally, from this class, ideally, you'll put your final project in there and anything else you consider to be relevant. Hopefully, with the final project, we'll get this where we can next week, where we can go and deploy this to Azure, and you'll have an actual URL that you'll be able to give. You do not need to have a any kind of credit card to do this. You supposedly can do it for free. I'm going to be working on that this weekend to see if I can, grab one of the ones that I've done and put it out there so we can replicate the steps for all of us. All right. So with all that said, let's jump into the chapter. Now, what I'd like to do today then is I'm going to start on page 648 right at the beginning. Some of the stuff at the beginning, we're just going to blaze through. All right. But today we're going to go to the how to get started with identity, how to register a user, and how to log in a user. We're going to get up to 678, which is approximately half the chapter. It's a little more. Then tomorrow we'll do the how to work with roles and the more skills for working with identity. If we get done before, if it only takes an hour, then that's it for the day. But I'm going to take it nice and slow. I want to go over all of the code because basically what you're going to do is you're going to take the steps that are in this chapter and you're going to apply them for the last hands-on test to that sales order or bicycle database that we did. You will not have to make this an actual cart. All right, you won't have to do that, but you will have to be able to provide authentication and authorization. That is probably 90% of the last test that you'll have to do. That's why I want to go over this and go over it nice and slowly. All right, we talked about this before, that there's 3 types of authentication. We don't have to go through them. Just be cognizant of the fact that the one we're using is individual user account authentication. All right. You should also by now totally understand the difference between authentication and authorization. You must authenticate before you can authorize. Authentication is typically, login password, can be more than that. All right. And authentication is, again, the rights you have once you have been authorization is what you can do basically once you have been authenticated. All right. I don't think there's anything new there. All right. I think this is all stuff we've talked about before. All right. Hopefully you have at least some understanding of what's going on in this picture here. All right. But these are the steps basically we have to go through. All right. And what you'll find on the next or the coming pages is depending on how you decorate your different parts of your program. All right. Either you'll be able to log in without authorization at all, and that's the anonymous, or you'll have to log in to see. Basically, it's going to be the authorized. And then there's other things you'll only be able to do if you're logged in as an administrator. Again, we'll talk more about that tomorrow. Now, one thing to keep, and you have to be able to understand this too. One of the things you'll be asked on the test is to go and take something and basically set it up as a persistent cookie. The difference between a session cookie and a persistent cookie is the fact that a session cookie will basically be disposed of when the session ends. A persistent cookie will persist or last even after it ends. In either case, a cookie is a text file that's written by the server to the browser. And they explain what happens in here with that cookie as you log in to try to help the login type of process. As far as the introduction to identity, okay, as it says here, these are all classes that in one way or another are used in this program. All right. The first one is the identity DB context. All right. And one of the first things we're going to do is we're going to go into the bookstore context. It's already done, but I just want to review this with you. And we're changing this from having it inherit from DB context so that it inherits from identity DB context. That allows you to work not only with your tables that are in this application, those being the book table, the author table, and the genre table, but it'll also allow you, once you create the user and do the other work that we'll talk about shortly, to be able to go and to be able to establish roles and managers and users. All right. So we'll talk about the identity user a little bit today and the user manager a little bit today. The other ones we'll at least touch on tomorrow. If you want to restrict access, so if you take this as it's shown right here and you put authorize at the top of a controller, that means that anything that's in that controller, anything that's in there, you'll have to be logged in. Now, what you can, CAN, what you can do is you can set that up at the top and then override things inside of it. So for instance, I could say authorize at the top, but if I wanted anyone to be able to list it, I could go down to the allow anonymous down here, and that would override the authorized that's at the top. All right. Also, like in this example here, I'm overriding and I'm saying, hey, in this book controller, if I put this at the top, you can't do a flaming thing in there by default unless your role has been set up as admin. So these are the three types that are in here. All right. Typical types of roles will be like an administrator or possibly like managers, etc. I know I've worked at places before where they set up a role or set up roles for managers so that they can go in and they can look at our code. Typically, when you set it up for a manager, not always, but typically, like for them, they were given read permission. They could read anything to make sure we were doing what we were supposed to be doing. They weren't given write permission. They weren't given execute permission because they'd have no reason to do anything like that. All right. So to get started with identity, let me just bring this up. So this is the one. Let's talk first because this is all stuff that you're going to have to do to your sales order project. All right. Now, if you want to, you can use the same database we've been using for the sales order, or you can have another one. All right. It doesn't really matter, but a couple things that are in here. We've been doing this all semester long. There is nothing new in what you see right there. All right. There should be nothing new. In other words, I'm in the program.cs file, and underneath my builder.services.add controllers with views, we've got in here our builders.services where we are doing our use SQL server. And you'll notice again, that's my context file there and there. All right. What is new is right here. Now, if you are asked on the test, hint, hint, to set some of the stuff. So if you look in here, what does this mean? All right. Well, anything that's set to false means you don't have to do it, right? So in other words, the minimum length of a password is going to be 6. We've talked about this before, that typically the way to take a password and make it more and more secure is to take that number and make it bigger. I have worked at places already where at one place, your password had to be 18 characters. All right. So you look in here, require non-alphanumeric is false. What does that mean? That means that you're not requiring a special character, a comma, an asterisk, etc. Required digit is false, which means that your password does not have to have a number in it. If you run through this example, though, it's not listed in here as true or false, but I believe that when you set up a password, that it has to have at least one. And again, is gone over and through in the book. All right. Finally, if you go down a little further, right underneath, where is it? There. Right underneath app.use routing, these two are new as well. All right. And they are being able to use authentication and use authorization. So all of that stuff that I just showed you right there, it's all explained in here. All right. So I guess I maybe jumped ahead a little bit. Let's go back. So again, the stuff in here with adding, well, I guess maybe I did it a little out of order. So let's look at the DB context. All right. Go in here and under my models and my data layer, I'm going to open up the bookstore context.cs file. And there's 3 or 4 changes that have to be made in here. Number 1 is we have to go and add the using Microsoft ASP.NET Core identity, the using the bookstore models domain models rather. This change now from DB context to identity DB context. All right. And finally, this line right here, which basically says we have to call the constructor. All right. Other than that, it's the same stuff we had in here. But again, you are going to have to make similar changes for this sales order or bike database project that you worked on for your previous hands-on tests. All right. So again, what you'll notice too is many of the things that we work on in here are going to have this. They're going to either say T or /T, they're tasks. All right. And many of the tasks that are being done in here, you're going to see async in front of them. And async means asynchronous. When you use async, when you are identifying a method, all right, or something with a task, then someplace inside of there, you will need to be using the await keyword. So async and await work in unison with one another. We talked about this in the AWD1115 class. All right. But what async allows you to do is, especially when you're doing things that are going to involve database lookups and the like, while you're doing it, you can give control back to the system. All right. And then go back and do whatever it is you wanted to do once you get done, all right, with your database operation. Now, when we set this up, initially, the way this is set up is all it's going to require in here are these first three fields. So for this identity user, this is what you're talking about, what you would need in order to be able to log in. All right. So typically it's a username and a password. Some places will be a username, a password, and a confirm password. But you can also go in if you want to and add email with a confirm email and phone number with a confirm phone number. And it's even possible to go in and add other things. That's a little bit of overkill, I think, with 7 things. And the first 2, or at least the first 3, would be typically sufficient. When you're doing this, as it says, you're going to be adding that user statement that you see right there in the middle of the page using Microsoft .identity, .asp netcore .identity. All right. And then that public class user, all right, in this entity class, you know, what are you going to add? Probably not a whole heck of a lot. If we take a look at the example here, so if we open this up and I go down to models, domain models, and I go to user, that's what's in there. Not a lot. All right. A first name, a last name, and a role. Now you'll notice above this role name, it says not mapped. When you put something in here like this that says not mapped, it means even though it's a field that could go into the database table, do not put it in to the database table. All right. Don't map it into an actual table. All right. So all we have in here is the first name and the last name. And if you say, well, what about, don't worry about it. We'll talk about it in a minute. All right. And again, as you can see, this inherits from identity user, and this needs to use the Microsoft ASP.NET Core identity. All right. Now, another thing that they mention in here is coming in and bringing this in with NuGet. All right. I've been playing around with this a little bit myself. All right. But if what I want to tell you is if you look in here, and again, I should say this to you, this is a working example, but you'll probably have to do an add migration and an update database for it to work on your machine. All right. Okay. Bring this up. Come on. There we go. Okay. I just closed it accidentally, but bring it up again. All right. So one thing you will have to do for your test is to go to Tools, NuGet Package Manager, Manage NuGet Packages for Solutions. And in there, you will have to bring in this. And I thought it was brought in there already. Maybe it's not, but I think that it is. The oh, you will have to make sure that you bring in the Microsoft ASP.NET Core Identity Entity Framework Core. All right. And when you do bring that in, all right, even with a new one like this where we were using 7.05, when I did it, I still had to go back and use version 6 to get it to work. All right. I want to say that again. And that is that when you go in and you look for this, all right, ASP.NET Core .identity, etc. All right. And you find that right there, the Entity Framework Core, and you go in and you install that. Notice it's 6.0 that's installed. All right. Don't try it with the latest and greatest. It probably won't work, is what I'm telling you. All right. Some of the other stuff in here I've already mentioned. Again, changing the bookstore context from DB context to identity DB context and adding this line right here. All right. I took a class once online, and the guy, when we did something like this, and I had a question, it was basically, it's like, okay, I get it. We have to do this stuff. But like this, why do we have to do it? And his answer was, it's just the way they set it up in the language. There's certain things that you have to do. All right. And that's going to be one of them. So this is another page in your book that you want to make sure that you at least know where it is when you're taking your test. All right. Then, as it says, for the identity to work, you must create all the tables it needs for your database. And those are basically the two most important are your user table and your roles table. All right. And then they give you the steps for doing that right here. All right. We've already talked about this. Okay. And I just grabbed a new version of this before. So I'm going to do exactly what they say and see what happens. All right. I thought this was on here already, but maybe it's not. But we're going to try it like this anyway. So I'm going to come in again and do a tools, NuGet package manager console, which gets me down to the bottom right here. I'm going to bring this way up so you can see it. Then move this down. All right. And now I'm going to do exactly what they say there and add migration, add identity tables. If this doesn't work, if it fails right away, you probably don't have something loaded or you spelled like the add migration wrong or something. All right. Now it says I've already got that in there, so I already used it. Okay, what does that mean? Well, I can come back in here and just call it, all right, I'm just going to call it update tables, whatever. It doesn't matter. So I'll put that in. You can see it succeeded. Boom. All right. Now, what happens, and you should know this by now, is after we did that, all right, after we did all that stuff, if I go in here and I look at basically at what got changed, all right, in here there's nothing because there was nothing to change. But if I go back here to migrations and I go to add identity tables, what you'll see in here is a lot of important stuff. All right, so here's roles. Again, where we can set up an admin role, etc. So what they're saying in here is the kind of stuff that you can put in here. All right. Now they've got like name, normalized name, etc. Typically, name and normalized name are the same thing. It's just that normalized name is in uppercase. But if we keep looking through here, there's our users. So you see all the stuff that's in there. Just because that stuff is in there does not mean you have to use it. What do I mean? Well, you would think users would need an ID associated with them. And and an email, maybe an email confirmed, all right, and probably or possibly at least a password. Notice that the password is hashed right away, but some stuff like phone number confirmed, two-factor enabled, lockout, etc. Those things are things that are available to you, but they're not things you have to necessarily use. All right. So if you want to look through this, these are all the tables that get created when you run through this. So after you do this and you run through, you should be able then to go out to View, SQL Server Object Explorer, go to your databases, find the one that's, I don't know, I think it's still bookstore, go to tables, and now what you'll notice is there is in here not just books, authors, and genres, but there's ASP.NET users, ASP.NET roles, etc. So as we go in, if you go in here, you can take a quick look at everything that's in there. But what you'll notice when you take a look, how do I move that up? Come on. What you'll notice is many of them have the word null before them, which means you don't have to put those entries in there. All right. Okay. Some of them may even be put in for you automatically. But if I go in here now and I right mouse click and I choose view data, I've already added a few users. You won't see these in yours unless you've added them. All right. But you can go in there, like I said, then and add users. So when we go in and we run this, because I'm jumping ahead right now, but when we go through here and we run this, I'm going to leave that right where it is. And let's see. Go back to the program here. All right. Yeah, and I didn't. Yeah, that's nothing. So there's what we have. All right. But if I go in now and I go to register, this is what we're talking about. You're going to have to build something like this for your test. All right. I believe all you'll need is like username, password, and confirm password. But this was put in there because this is the stuff they added at the end of the chapter. So I can come through here and type in, for example, Jeff S. Email. All right, I got a charter account. I'll just put in my charter email. Password, I'm going to put in capital H, little e, L, little e, LLO123, capital H, little e, LLO123, and I'm going to say register. All right. Okay, it says invalid column, last name. That ain't good. Another one of these things where it worked fine this morning. All right, register. Yeah, Jeff. Put it in like this. Jeff Scott there, password ELLO123, HELLO123. Now, if this gives me an error, I have no idea why it is. It is. Invalid column name. Okay. Let's see if we can debug this and figure out why it's giving us that. Okay. So it's telling us invalid column name, first name, and last name. All right. We stop the run here. And let me go back to user. All right, our user.cs. And it's telling us it doesn't like the first name and the last name. As far as I can tell, they're in here. Let's go to our user view model. All right, which says we have a list of users and a list of roles. There's no problem there. Well, I'm going to have to try to figure that out by tomorrow. Let's see if we can register a user. And if they go into the, that's what we just did. Let's see. I should be able to log in as well. All right, I set up a one here. Oh, good God. I'm wondering if this got screwed up because of the last migration I just did. I'm not sure. So I'm going to do a remove migration to get rid of that last one. So if I go back to my migrations now, that one I just did, add identity, added first, last names. All right, that's in there. That added the first name and that added the last name. So they were in there. So that shouldn't hurt anything. So let's see if we run it now. Oh, good God. Well, let's do this. Let's remove one more migration. You won't have to worry about this. I don't believe, I'll double check the test, but I don't believe you have this in there. This was the last migration. Added first and last names. All right. So let's see if I do another remove migration, if that goes away. And that one's gone now. Now, if I run it, am I still going to get the error? But golly, I'll have to fix it by tomorrow. All right. The point is this. You shouldn't have to worry about that. All right. I've got your test. I'll look at it during the break to double check on that. But as far as I know, you won't have to worry about playing around with first name, last name like that at all. It shouldn't be any kind of an issue. I'll double check during the break. All right. But you will have to go in with the package manager console, and you will have to go in and add that identity field, and then you'll have to go back in and add a migration and update the database. All right, should have probably just left it right there. Okay. Then how to configure the middleware for identity. Now, I am supposing, so what I want you to do, I don't care if you're watching this live, if you're watching this on tape, but what I want you to do is this. When you get the time, I'm going to grab my latest copy of this. This is the one I did. So let's see. I think it's called Sports Pro Hot. Sales Orders Hot. All right. So this is mine right now. You've all done the first 3 tests. And if you did them and did them correctly, this is where yours should be. There's a reason I'm showing you this. That when you run your program from Hot 3, which is again what this one is, there's certain things that should happen. All right. If I go to admin, I can manage categories. There's all my categories, and I've got an update and a delete. If I go to products, it's the same thing. I've got an update and delete. And I can even break those down by category. All right. If I go back to the regular website and I view the products, the only thing I can do is view details. I do not have any admin capability right now. Yours should be set up like that now. To be sure yours is, what I will do is I will make a private repo of mine, and you can either use mine to upgrade yours for the last test, or yours if it works, or you can make changes to yours. The point is, though, that right now on here, the only thing that can actually change things are admins. All right, they're the only ones. A regular user right here only can look at products and this is a bogus thing. It'll say it was added, but it really wasn't. All right. And they can view the details for any product. All right. But if you go out to admin here, they're the only who can up the things you will have to do for the test. All right. Enough on that. All right, we already talked about this stuff that's in here, so I'm not going to hit on that again. Mention all this. All right, so how to add log in, log out buttons and links to the layout. You will be asked to do this. All right, what does that mean? Well, again, looking at the example, which now isn't working for, but when you go in to run this, and you do run it, like I said, I'm not sure why it's giving me errors. I'll try to figure it out during the break. But when you come in and you log in or you register, all right, so when you do get where you are logged in, this should change from log in to log out, from log in to log out, all right? Also, the user's name should be there. So if I'm in as admin, it should say admin there. If I'm in as JP Scott, etc. All right. So how do you do that? That's pretty much what they're talking about in here. So this is what we want. If you are not logged in, so if you just bring it up, there should be a login button. After you do successfully log in, there should be a log out button, and it should have the name showing there of whatever you're logged in for. All right. Now, if you use the code from what I just gave you, all right, you should be able to do a lot of copy and paste. Now, that said, you're going to have to do some keying in on your own, etc. But you should try to look at and work with stuff that at least ideally will already be working. So let's look at what's in here. And in particular, we'll look at the stuff that's in yellow. All right, the first thing is an @using Microsoft.ASP.NET Core.identity. And again, you bring that in for much of the work that you do that involves, adding users and adding roles. The next one is an inject statement. Now, we didn't go through this, but injection was in chapter 14 in the book. We didn't go through it because there just wasn't time. All right, but by doing this injection here, what we're doing is we're bringing this sign-in manager and making it available in this routine. All right. So what do we have here? Well, take a look. If sign-in manager dot is signed in, so if that user is signed in, this is how you go in, and as it says, signed in user, log out button and username. You'll have to know how to get to this page and how to add this code, all right, to your program. I should tell you too that, like I said, Evan and I have been conversing sometimes daily lately on this test. We wrote it together. I wrote version 1. He pulled apart my wordage and reworded it to a way he liked it. For version 2, I looked at that and changed some more wording around, and that became version 3, which was the final. All right, the final version. And even though I said in there, I'll give it to you Wednesday, I'll probably give it out to you tomorrow already. But this is how, okay, you come in there, and once they're logged in, you put in the log out information and you put their name in there. All right. Otherwise, as it says right here, you're not logged in yet. All right. And there's stuff in here that should make sense to you by now. For instance, all right, when we look right here, anonymous user, all right, it says register link and login button. But if we look here, well, what's happening? right here with this else, it's calling from the account controller, it's calling the register method. All right. And here it's assuming you're already. So do you want to register, or are you registered already and can you log in? All right. The rest of the stuff is just the decoration that's been done in here with Bootstrap. And that's what they say on the bottom of the page here. I'm not going to read a bit of that to you. You can see it yourselves. All right. So the next thing that you'll want to do then is you'll come in and you'll create an account controller. As it says, you want to make sure when the browser makes a request that doesn't pass authentication, you go to /account/login. All right. So in other words, if you were logged in and you tried to get to something that you didn't have the right to get to because it was either given an authorize or an authorized with a group that was equal to admin and you weren't logged in yet, it should push you back to the default, which would be this login page. All right. Now, as they mentioned right there, notice all this stuff it says you can inject into there. A user manager, a sign-in manager, a role manager. All right. It says to do that, you can code private properties. And anything like I said in there with a T typically is going to be a task, which means typically it's going to be something that's going to be done with an async and an await. And also typically you will need a using in there for a using system.threading.tasks in there quite often as well. All right. So they give an example here, and as it says, as you'll see throughout the rest of the chapter, manager T objects use async methods. Notice what that says, exactly what I told you. They can return control to whatever call the method before the method is finished executing. It's not a big thing in what we're doing. We have very few users, and until you create an admin group, you don't even have any groups. All right, or roles. But if you were working in a place that had hundreds of users, thousands of users or more, and a multiple number of roles or groups, all right, this would become more and more important. And typically what you're going to find too is if you get hired at a company, you're not going to be in there in an island. In other words, if you're hired as a programmer, they may have a group in there or a role that's called programmer, and they're immediately going to put you in there into that role. All right. Okay. Now, most of the previous code that we've looked at in the book, as they mentioned there, has been synchronous. Synchronous, you can look at as basically being almost single threading. In other words, whatever you're doing has to finish executing before you can go on. Now, as they mentioned, their synchronous methods are easier to understand. All right, but asynchronous can really help, as it says there, with time-consuming tasks such as accessing a database. All right, and this becomes even more important. Think about it. If there were a million or millions of users and you're trying to log in, you might want that to be an asynchronous process. All right, because you don't know how long it's going to take. So as it says there, the starting code, you can see the using statements. Just so you know, all right, depending on how yours is set up, all right, if you add the domain models into yours rather than putting everything in models, you might also need a using bookstore.models.domain models. All right. This is more of the same that I just mentioned to you. Okay. All right. So before we start this, how to register a user, it's 1 o'clock. Let's take 10 minutes. I will see you back here at 1:10. I got to get a drink. All right, we're gonna continue on, okay? All right, again, I will look at this at the end of class today. I'm so tired of stuff working, and then when I come to bring in the class, it doesn't work, but it is what it is. All right, so one of the things you will have to do when you take the test is you will have to be able to register a new user, all right? In order to do that, you will have to create a register view model. Now, they show how to do this in here, so let's just take a look at what is actually in here. All right. And again, we need this view model. This is going to be what communicates with the ASP.NET users table. So notice what's in here. All right. What we are saying is you need to put in, they want you to build this. So this is the view. All right. The view model is, again, it's the conduit between the register view itself and the controller, basically. All right. So you're going to have to build something like this. Now notice what's in here. All right. So you come in here and on your so you click the register button. This is what comes up. So a username, a password, and a confirmed password. You will be asked in addition to this, and we looked at this just a little bit ago, to things in there such length being 6 and etc., the stuff we just looked at. In addition, you can see that in this view, there's what you could refer to as a shortcut. All right, already registered, log in. That's just a link. Why? Because why should you have to register each time you want to log in? All right, but you will have to build something like this. I would suggest virtually coming in here and pilfering this code. So what do we have in here? All right, all fields are required. all fields have a default value of string.empty, which is fine because they're all strings. It probably would have been okay to make those null as well. Usually with null, that's more for numeric values. All right. And for strings, it's string.empty like this. All right. You can see too that with the password and with the confirm password, the data type on both of those is password. What that should mean is as you're typing in the password and the confirm password, it should not show on screen. All right. So as mentioned here, the register page creates a new user and signs them into the app. All right. If the registration succeeds, right to the home page, and it should show you that, basically that you're in. All right. If you want the password fields, as it says, to, those options, you must use the data type attribute to specify the password type. So that's stuff we looked at earlier. All right. Now, again, this next is how to build that associated view. So this is the view model, and then this will be the associated view. So you are going to build something that looks like this. All right. Again, you'll notice in here, the register action method for get request, there's really nothing in here. All right. But if you look in here at what we have, again, this is your view. So you can see that the thing is in a big form right here. All right. And when we take a look at what's in here, well, you can see these are the three fields that we put into our view model: a username, a password, and a confirm password. So really shouldn't be any surprise in there. And here's that already registered login thing down here. Okay. All right. Now, for the register action for post requests, well, this is after you log in. So what do you want to have happen? Let's take a look at this. It says the next figure summarizes some of the methods and properties that the action method uses. So what are they? I'm not going to read them to you. You can see them right here. You'll notice that all 5 of the ones shown here are all asynchronous methods. All right. Typically, when you work with a lot of stuff, if you remember this back from the days of AWD1115, when there were times when we would look at certain methods in the Node package manager or in the Node API documentation, and with most things in there, they had that they could be either synchronous or asynchronous. All right. But in here, since we're working with database, virtually everything that you have to do to work with a database is going to be asynchronous. And they go through with the async keyword, etc., and they show you some examples of how it's going to be used. All right. So as they mentioned there, within the action method, as it says, the code starts by checking whether the model state is valid. If it's not, you want to send them right back to the register page because something is wrong. They attempted to register, but they did something wrong. Like what? Well, we already mentioned this. All right, that you put in a password and a confirm password and they didn't match. Something like that. All right. However, as it says, if it is valid, the code creates a user object and it sets the user. So again, after you're logged in, up in the nav bar, it can put that username in there. All right. So for this asynchronous method call to work, it must be preceded by the await operator. We've already talked about this. These things work in unison with one another. If something is async, then something inside must use await. All right, and it can be more than one await inside of an async too. Then you'll notice if you look on here, well, the two properties of this identity result: succeeded, meaning it worked, and errors, meaning it didn't. All right. So that if on there that you see with the stuff in the yellow, that's it worked. All right. And if you get down here, you're showing everything that didn't work. So as an example, if you came in there and you tried to log in and you put in absolutely nothing for any of those three fields, you'd have multiple error messages. One that would say something like username is required. Another one would say password is required. And the other one would either say password, compare password is required, or compare password must equal password, or something like the user back to the homepage. All right. Now, again, there's more. I probably didn't go over everything that's in here. All right. But at least hopefully you have a fundamental rather understanding of what is going on in here. All right. Okay. So we talked about how to register a user. Now, assuming the user has been registered, then the next thing to do is how to log in the user. And just like you have a register view model, you've got a login view model. And the login view model is shown on page 673. All right. Looks very similar to what you just saw, but it's not the same. So notice there's just a username and a password. There's no confirm password. All right. You're already in the system. So it's grabbing an existing username, or attempting to, and grabbing an existing password. That password must go with that username. All right. And then you've got this return URL. If you want to, by default, usually what happens is this defaults that if you try to log in and you screw up, it pushes you right back to the login page or to a register page. All right. Plus, if you notice in here, there is a remember me. Okay, we talked about this a little bit earlier. If the user checks the remember me box, the app is going to apply this persistent cookie. Remember, as opposed to a session cookie, which expires at the end of the session, it'll keep them logged in, for lack of better words. And that's not even true. It doesn't keep them logged in, but it remembers their information. So boom, you don't have to re-provide it again. So the login view model is right there. It's pretty much what I just said. It's much of the same stuff you had for the register model, but whereas the register model had a username, a password, and a confirmed password, when you're logging in, there's no use in having a confirmed password. So there's just the username and the password. In addition, as it says, it provides the return URL. All right. It says it stores the URL that the app should return to if the login succeeds, or the remember me, which creates the persistent cookie. All right. Okay, next, they show you the view that is associated with this. Okay. So as it says right here, the login action for get requests displays the account login view, which is going to be shown next. All right. And if we take a look at this, there's really nothing that we haven't talked about before. Either we talked about it today or we've talked about it during another time. All right. So there's your get request. And again, notice return URL equals return URL, which typically is just going to get you to a home page by default, unless you specify something else. All right. And then we're coming in here and we've got to check those two properties. All right. We've got to check the username and we've got to check the password. So, basically you're checking that against your ASP.NET users to make sure that they exist in the database. I believe that when you type these in, and I could be wrong, but I think that these are they're not even case dependent. I think you can log in. I think you can set up your account with like lowercase and then log in uppercase or vice versa, and it still works. All right. And then there's the remember me. Okay. Like I said, not a lot of new stuff in here. And again, the description, probably more than I just gave you, is right there. Now, the login action, as it says, for post request, this is where the rubber meets the road. So this is the stuff that has to happen. It says first in here, they're going to summarize the password sign in async right here. All right. Logs in a user and return result object. When the lockout failure is set to true, it locks out the user if the sign in fails. And I believe that's a one-time thing. So we're not going to worry about even playing with that. All right. But here we're getting into the post. So this is the login post. Previously, they showed you the login get, which wasn't much of anything. All right. But this is the login post. And you'll notice, what are we doing here? Well, we're telling the password man or the sign-in manager, okay, we're checking on the password. And we're seeing if the username and password that were provided are in the database, and is it set up for a persistent cookie? Again, the lockout on failure is false, so that if you do mistype, you're able to put it, to re-enter. If everything succeeds, notice the difference in here. This is the whole if statement. All right. Then down here, there's no else. So here, if the model state was valid, well, this is if we attempted to put it in and it succeeded. All right. This basically is, if it's valid, it's just checking. Did you put in something for each field? And what you put in for each field, did it meet the right criteria? In other words, if we said the password has to be 6 characters, did you put in a password with 6 characters? All right. This is saying, basically, did it find a match? If it did not find a match, it's going to send you right back to the home page. And if it did find a match, it'll send you wherever it is you told them to send it. If you get down to here, that meant that the model state is valid, failed to begin with. So you're going to get a message that comes up that just says invalid username password. And I should have mentioned this before, or you should have heard it before in another class. But remember, there's one of two things that can fail. Actually, one or both can fail. You can have a username that's not in the database because it hasn't been registered yet, or the user spelled it wrong, or whatever. Or you can have a password in the database, or the user spelled it wrong, or the user doesn't know it. So when you put in a message like this add model error, you should never let them know, well, your username was okay, but your password was wrong, or vice versa. All right. You want to put in a more generic error message like the one that's shown right there. All right. All right. I'm going to stop right now. I know it's early, but I'm going to stop because I want mine to work. So I've got to figure out what the heck the problem is so that tomorrow we can pick it up right here and we can go through how to work with roles and the other stuff that's in here. Before we do, I'll give you a little prelude, and I'm going to show you as soon as I can find it. I'm going to show you the test. I'm not going to hand it out right now, but I'll show you what's in there. call though. Let's see. I moved stuff around this morning trying to clean up my desktop, and I shouldn't have. I know I've said this to you before, but probably if you haven't gotten it already, probably by a week from today, you will get the course evaluation form. Fill it out, please. Send it back in. Say whatever you need to say, but do it. But please do it. The only way I get better, the only way the class gets better, is if that is done. Also, I should mention to you guys, because you're all set to graduate, that come March of next year, yeah, a year, almost a year from now, but you will be cordially invited to the Rankin Technical College Alumni Advisory Committee meeting, where we meet for about an hour or so. All right. And Evan basically asks 4 questions. Hey, what did we teach you that you're able to use on your job? Hey, what did we teach you that you're not using on your job? Next, if you were an instructor in this program, what would you add that's not in here right now? And then he just will say, anybody have any other comments? That's what they do. So here's the test. Copy it out here. All right, that's it. 1 page. So let me bring this in and make it bigger. There we go. Complete the following. Yeah, use everything. Put it on GitHub. For this, as it says, continue working with the sales order database application. Use what we're going over right now as a template. So the first thing you'll have to do is to add those identity tables. What does that mean? That means that you're going to have to go in and make those changes. You're going to have to go in and under your models, you're going to have to add a user model, and you're going to have to add, possibly a user model and a user view model, and you're going to have to go in and I totally lost my train of thought right there. So you'll also have to go in and add the NuGet thing that we talked about in class. All right. Next, update the application to allow a new user to register for an account. So again, you'll want to make sure that when you run your application, that over here you have login and you have register. All right. Provide working links to both of those. Okay. After registration, the user should be logged into their account with their username showing in the nav bar. I don't have that right now because of the errors that I have, but again, it should be in here someplace. We talked about this already. Add the shortcut links. I think the one is in there. So, no, I thought it was. So if I click register, already registered, log in. If I click login, not registered, register as a new user. That's what they're talking about there. This we're going to go through tomorrow, seeding an admin role and an admin account. So you'll see how to do that. When you do that, the username, as it says, should be admin, and set up a password of admin123. All right. Now notice, only allow admin role accounts to access the admin area controllers. What does that mean? That means exactly this, that you have an admin area already in your stuff. That means all of the controllers that are in here, all right, and yours will be different, again, because we're doing the byte database. But if I look at all of these controllers, notice what's at the top. Authorize, roles equal admin. authorize, roles equal admin. Same thing. Same thing. Same thing. You better do that. That is saying by putting it at the top, only administrators can go in there. All right. Now, this is going to be something we'll look at this tomorrow. All right. But only display the admin link if the user who's logged in has an admin role. I want to say that again. If you're logged in as an admin, it should show the admin link. If you're not logged in as an admin, it should not show the admin link. Again, we'll look at that in more depth tomorrow. Finally, as it says, create a user manager page. All right. That allows you to create an administrator, delete an administrator, add a user to the admin role, all right, and remove somebody from the admin role. These are 4 different things. All right. So notice only an administrator can delete a user. Only an administrator can create a new role. So if I didn't have an admin role, or if I had an admin role and now I wanted a manager, only an admin could do that. Once I have a manager, then only the admin can add a user to that role. Remove that role. Add all this up. 10, 20, 25, 30, 40, 45, 55, 60, 65, 70, 75, 80, 85, 90, 95. I must have missed 5 someplace. Maybe that one, because there are 100 points. And when I talked to Evan about this, I told him when Mr. Smith was teaching at the St. Louis campus, he would write at the top, before you had any of this stuff, he would write no partial credit given for any question. If it was worth 10 points, you either got a 10 or a 0. And I told Evan, I didn't think that was right. I said, if you make an attempt at something and you get it 3/4 right, why shouldn't you get 7 or 8 points? He said he agreed, and that's how he's going to grade it as well. All right. So like I said, that's all I have. I want to fix this so we can pick it up tomorrow, and we can pick it up right here and go over how to work with roles. After we get done with that, I will email each one of you out a copy of the test. All right. So I will talk to you tomorrow at 12:05. Thanks.